Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast with me, Mark Cribb. Now, this week is the week where we are expecting Rishi to announce some changes to the furlough scheme, and I think a nervous time for many in hospitality, as rumours are going around about a 25% contribution. And we're hoping, I guess, that there is some flexibility with that, and maybe sectors such as, legals or accountancy, or less impacted sectors than hospitality, perhaps that becomes an obligation, but in hospitality, some sort of flexibility would be useful. I think, a number of people that I've spoken to who are looking maybe at takeaway operations or opening, but not opening in our full guise, perhaps the opportunity to bring some of our team members back for Friday, Saturday, Sunday service and pay for, perhaps 3 days of the week, but for the government to continue to support the team sort of 2 or 3 days a week, or maybe to bring some people back and not others, but the opportunity to refurlough for shorter periods of time. That's the kind of flexibility as an industry that we are going to need as we limp back up to speed. And that limping is going to be very different for different sectors. So if you're a city centre restaurant, or maybe sort of daytime trade operation where you rely on the business community to come in and buy lunch, that's very different to, say, a country hotel or a country pub, the likes of the Pig and the Chewton Glen, or people like me with big outside terraces on the beach, may be able to trade faster, but it may well be that's only for 2 months. Maybe we get some trade in July and August, and then the flexibility to refurlough our teams over the winter is key. So we'll all look out for that. Hopefully in the next few days we will get some clarity. But in today's episode, I am chatting to Peter Ducker from the Institute of Hospitality. And a slightly guilty confession in the fact that whilst I've interviewed a couple of members of the IOH, I didn't know a huge amount about the organisation. But I really thoroughly enjoyed chatting to Peter. Clearly a well-informed human of hospitality, a huge amount of knowledge over a very broad range of the sector. So we do end up diving around some topics a little bit. We start with the OTAs, the online travel agencies, because I found out about Peter's background specifically around that sector, and it is something that I'd like to do a full podcast on one day. But we have a little dip into that. We dip into the challenges of education. So the IOH do a lot of work with the universities and the accreditation of courses, and we touch on, I guess, this issue of when the university started to look more for profit, arguably, maybe than education, and that hospitality can be a very labour-intensive part of education, particularly if you need commercial kitchens. So we touch on that and what it means for the employment of people and for recruiting people in our industry, and something that's come up with a few other guests as well is this thing around the access to cheap labour, maybe from Eastern Europe, and that tap has been turned off to a certain extent, partly through Brexit and partly through the pandemic. And does that create an opportunity actually to improve standards, maybe improve payment in the UK? And then we touch on mentorship, which comes across really clearly as something that Peter is very passionate about, and the IOH, and something that I think is great. And specifically, I guess, around this often issue that it's exciting in our industry that you can fast track up through the hierarchy, but it does mean that at quite a young age you may potentially be managing people who are older than you, and you might be on a different career trajectory to some of your peers, and the mentorship really helps just develop people's, I suppose, managerial skills. And then we get into the details of the pandemic and the furloughing of the IOH's team and the impact it has on their events, and then a broader look at the industry and how we may all come out of this. So fascinating chat, and I really hope you enjoy it. And as always, if you'd like to support the podcast, it would be really appreciated. Become a Patreon supporter via humansofhospitality.co.uk/donate, and anytime you can click on the 5-star reviews and leave us a little worded review. That is also a great deal of help. Okay, thanks so much. Enjoy the episode, and I'll be back with a new one soon. Cheers. Peter Ducker from the Institute of Hospitality, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Hugely appreciated. Can I just ask, are you in your office or are you locked down at home?
I'm locked down at home, but fortunately we're very connected, so my office phone rings on my desk.
Perfect. Okay. Did you work from home before, or was this a pandemic response?
No, I worked from home before. 2 years ago, we changed the way we work. We moved offices and just changed the technology. So
that's a bit of luck, isn't it?
Really, because our offices are in southwest London, and our job is to be out with the industry, and so most of my colleagues are out and about a lot, and it's easier to recruit the best people rather than the best people who can get to southwest London.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So where are you based?
I'm based south of Guildford. I'm about 15 miles south of Guildford.
Excellent. Okay, good. So, CEO or Chief Executive of the Institute of Hospitality, for people who don't know it, can you just explain a little bit about what the Institute of Hospitality is and what it does and what your role is, please?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, what we do is we're technically an educational charity, but we're the professional body for the industry. So there's two main tranches to what we do. First, we support members who are practicing hospitality people, whether they're hoteliers, restaurateurs, working in food service, or in the supply chain, through lifelong learning. And our motto is, professionalism through lifelong learning. So we do an awful lot of career development, mentoring, advice, management guides, etc., plus provide networking. And then the other half of what we do is we work with universities really to promote quality in hospitality education, whether it's in a university or whether it's in a hotel school. And we work with something like 200 institutions around the world. And we've got members around the world as well. We're a UK organisation, but some 30% of our members are overseas. Interestingly, in the last 20 years, there used to be expats working abroad, and increasingly now they are local people who still choose to belong to the Institute.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it, as to why so many abroad? Is that because are there similar organisations in lots of countries, or are you sort of world renowned, and is that why you appeal to the international market?
Well, I think a lot of the international stuff comes about because of our work with universities around the world. By the time people graduate, they're used to our resources, they're used to what we do, and so see us as an easy place to go to. And there aren't many bodies like ours. I mean, we have one of the largest online libraries of management books focused on hospitality in the world, and you can access it wherever you are. I mean, we have more students working with us in China than we have in the UK at the moment.
Really? Wow. So how old is the organisation?
The organisation is 82 years old, and it started just before the First World War, and has just evolved over the years.
Okay. Started as a commercial enterprise, or
Started to promote hospitality training. So it was very much a training organisation from the start, and then it morphed into being a professional body in the late 50s, early 60s.
right? Okay. And you're a charity.
We're a charity. Yeah, we have charitable status, which is a good thing to have because it clearly sets our agenda as not being for profit, but and having clear charitable objectives, which are training, education, and development.
Right. And how long have you been leading it?
I've been leading it for 7 years now. Yeah, but I've been a member since I entered the industry a long time ago. I'm what I call a recovering hotelier.
Are you? I was going to say, yeah. What's your background then?
Well, I was in hotel management for a long time. Particularly, I moved into sales and marketing, and then for 17 years, I ran a hotel reservations company, which I sold in 2005.
2005. Okay, so I'm trying to think. This was pre everything being booked online, but before the OTAs, was it?
No, it was during the growth of the OTAs. The OTAs really came of age after 9/11, and they really grew in the early 2000s. And we were a mid-sized company, sort of turning over, I don't know, about 12 million a year, and technologically, we just couldn't keep up with the OTAs. So I thought, in fact, a Finnish company who was developing a technology platform came to us, and I thought, if I get out of this now, I can get on and do something else. And thank God, I now run the professional body and absolutely love it.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So going off on a slight tangent, but can't help but ask, because obviously OTAs and online travel agents, for those who don't follow it, who have become, I don't know, a bit of a reputation, I suppose, for charging a significant amount of commission and for potentially trying to, I don't know, either manipulate price or certainly stop hotels going direct. Are you impartial on this, or have you got a particular opinion? It sounds like you're very experienced in that field.
Mark, I've got views on everything, believe me. But I've got particular views on that subject.
Go on then. I can't help but ask because it's fascinating for our sector.
As I say, I used to be a hotel salesman, so I got used to dealing with hotel booking agencies, and at one time they were regarded as the natural enemy. And later I was a hotel booking agent, so I was sort of gamekeeper turned poacher, I suppose. And I got into that because in those days the technology enabled a small and medium-sized business to do it well. And it was bandit country, to be quite frank. There were some rogues out there. And as the industry got more professional, the Hotel Booking Agents Association was formed, and its great achievement is to create a good platform between hotel booking agents who work mainly in the corporate space, as I'm sure you know, and hoteliers and venues. I think what's the problem with the OTAs is they are so powerful, and we're allowed to get so powerful that that they, some of them feel they can ride roughshod over their supply chain. My view is, if I can just ramble for a moment.
Please do. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm interested.
yeah, my view is that what needs to happen is hoteliers need to campaign, particularly with the ones who are the worst culprits, and I think we probably all know who they are, that they have in between themselves and the marketplace, they have a hotelier advisory board who are there really to help them to understand just how they cause problems to hotels and to form a better relationship. I mean, hotel companies have had advisory boards with intermediaries and clients for years, and I think that's really the way that OTAs have to evolve. Some of them are quite good at doing it already. Some of them really do need to have that. But the board has to be there not to be an apologist for the OTA to the hotel industry, but has to be there really to provide a viable interface, because, we're all part of a big ecosystem, aren't we? And if one part of the ecosystem destroys or damages the other parts, then it's never going to be a healthy environment. That's what needs to happen. But they got so powerful so quickly, and there hasn't. The issue is, of course, there are a few of them, and there are millions of hotel companies. We are a myriad of small enterprise. There's a few global players who, obviously we all know, but most of the supply chain is small and mid-sized businesses, and so there isn't that unity, there isn't that cohesion behind it, and I think that's what has to change over time.
Yeah, and since I've gone off on an instantaneous tangent, and some people listening may not know the issue, so I guess the biggest challenge we have is that they're charging maybe 20-25% commission on a booking, and I don't think the public necessarily get that. And then you're charging 20%, in VAT, so 40-45% of what you're paying disappears very quickly. And the frustration is that although many hotels may have their own website and their own sort of direct booking, that even if you type in a particular hotel's name that you're searching for, all too often the OTAs have got multi-million pound budgets, and their names are coming up before the hotels. And I get it from a consumer perspective, because that ability to search multiple locations and it's already saved your card details and your address details, so it's kind of a one-click booking process. But if 45% of what you're charging comes out of the system straight away, and all too often the OTA money is heading offshore to a company that's maybe not paying taxes in the UK, and it feels like it's sucking a sort of disproportionate amount of revenue out of the UK hospitality sector, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah. It must feel like that, yes, for sure. But I think, but it's more complicated than that. I think one of the interesting things is, even if people book direct, they will look at an OTA site first, just to check they're getting value for money.
Yeah.
So I think Cornell University did some really interesting research on that. That most private individuals, before they book a hotel, will look at 7 different websites to check that they're getting, it's the hotel they want, and B, that they're buying it at the right price. And a lot of work, as I'm sure you know, Mark, a lot of work is being done now to help hoteliers to improve their conversion rate of casual visitors into bookers.
Yeah. With the OTAs directly or independently to them?
Direct to website.
Direct to website, yeah. I guess that's the key, isn't it? Yeah, we don't have the same resources or training or knowledge, and quite often hoteliers are not techy enough, or just the amount of time, to be fair. And the OTAs, they do provide a service, because they do make it very easy to book, and they do raise awareness, globally. All of a sudden, if you're a little hotel that's just opened in the countryside, you can get global representation. It just feels like the balance isn't quite there.
You see, you've got to turn that one around and say the benefit of the World Wide Web, and the benefit of the fact that, the two things really that were first to the World Wide Web were travel and pornography, weren't they? Travel, it's where people buy stuff these days, and it's where they buy their travel products. And the better hoteliers can get at harnessing that, and making that conversion, the better it can be. And there's lots of companies. I agree with you. Hoteliers tend not to be that tech savvy very often, but there's lots of companies that will support them in it these days and help them to develop their online presence and enhance their conversion rate.
And is that part of your training as well? Do you do any courses as the Institute of Hospitality in that? Or?
We don't specifically on that, but we do have partner organisations who specialise in that field, and so we kind of signpost people to that, and they run webinars for us and that sort of thing, your articles and management guides. But to be quite frank, we're not specifically about the hotel sector. More than half of our practitioner members are hoteliers, but there's an awful lot of work in the food service and the restaurant sector as well. So.
Right. Okay. Well, I was going to ask about
And I have to say, one of the things that we're always criticised about is all of the food service guys say you're all about hotels, and all of the hotel guys say you're all about food service. So we're balancing things the whole time.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, good luck with that. And so I was going to ask about your typical member, I suppose, and it sounds like it's pretty diverse. But if you look at the restaurant side, does that tend to be, I'm guessing you've got the casual dining sector, you've got the independent sector, you've got your kind of hotel restaurants. Is there a particular sector that either does or does not tend to be pretty well represented with you?
I guess the fast food sector isn't particularly well represented with us. Casual dining is, but it tends to be senior management in it, who are the people sort of, well, generally these days, so much of it is private equity, isn't it? And they tend to be the people who sit in the corporate office, have a food and beverage background, but are working with the private equity people to identify investment and to provide that link with the chain, rather than property-based people. But we have an awful lot of independent restaurateurs or people who operate small groups, small local chains.
Okay. And the key benefits, the key reason people like that tend to join?
Well, they join, A, to be part of a network, so they get hooked into the industry, B, for their own professional development, but also to provide access to training and development for their staff. I mean, two years ago, we acquired the Academy of Food and Wine Service, which is a training enterprise in that sector. And we're now pushing out a lot of training, really taking people through from when they start working in a restaurant, day one training of this is why you need to wash your hands, through to supervisory and management training.
Okay, and these courses are done in specific locations, or is it predominantly online?
We've put all that online now because it really is stuff that can be consumed in bite-sized chunks and lends itself perfectly to online training.
Okay, and is it broken down into a syllabus where you'd follow a number of elements, I suppose, of a specific course? Or?
Exactly that, yeah. So there's a pathway through from, as I say, day one, this is why you wash your hands, through to this is how you plan staffing in a restaurant. This is how you, write a budget for a restaurant.
Right. So you're almost the online university of hospitality.
Yeah, I mean that's really sort of further education rather than higher education, isn't it? But yeah, we're the online college, if you like, or one of the online colleges. And
okay. And these are these accredited kind of courses? Are they specific to the? I presume you're known as the IOH as a short.
Yeah, we're known as the IOH. We are as a professional body. One of the things we do is accreditation. Right. So we don't accredit our own courses. I think there's a kind of given that if we produce them, they're credit worthy in their own right. But we accredit education courses, around the world, really, so that if you're taking an IOH accredited first degree, a bachelor's degree in Singapore, it equates exactly in terms of levels to the one you take in Canada, or the one you take in the UK, or the one you take in France. There's a sort of, we say that this is the standard of education for a bachelor degree or for a postgrad.
Right. And how is the world of university courses in hospitality going? So I'm based down in Bournemouth, and our local university did have a very good reputation for hospitality courses at one stage, but it seemed to be struggling in some ways to fill that sector. Is that a sort of nationwide indication of change, or is that very local? I genuinely don't know.
No, it is an international problem. Worse, I think, in the UK. And without getting too political, but I've got to get a bit political to say this. The problem is that these days universities are tasked to be profitable in their own right, and there's two challenges. First and foremost, operating a hotel school within a university is more expensive than operating a generic business degree. particularly if they have training restaurants and that sort of operation. And vice chancellors of universities, who are the guys who run them as businesses, look at it and they say, well, if we run a hospitality course, we can only get 12 or 13 or 20 students into the kitchen, so they're small modules. Whereas if we run a generic business degree, which we then pile other subjects on, so there's a business degree in hospitality, there's a business degree in, I can't think of another one, retail. We can run lectures in a theatre with 200 students in from 15 different streams of course, and just occasionally give modules which provide that sprinkle of specific knowledge on the top. And whilst that happens, hospitality education is deteriorating. And that's certainly what's happened in Bournemouth. It's been merged. The School of Hospitality, which has a fantastic reputation, has been merged over time into different schools within the university. And whilst the educating staff there in the School of Hospitality are still really fighting a rearguard action and fighting it very well, they're kind of pushing against the trend. The same's happened in other places. I'm not singling out Bournemouth. I mean, I'm an alumni of Oxford Brookes, and it's a very similar thing has happened there.
And if some of that then is a problem of demand and some is a problem of supply, does either one of those dominate?
Well, I think supply dominates because it's a simple mathematical thing that it's more expensive to offer vocational courses than it is to offer generic courses. So it's really governed by the maths there. And I think in terms of, as an industry, what we need to do about it is say, well, okay, we want our young graduates to feel comfortable talking to a chef. We don't, you don't necessarily need to have a degree education to be a very good chef, but in management, you need to be able to talk to chefs. You need to be able to understand them, understand how they do what they do. And so I think increasingly organizations, and we're certainly looking at it, we're saying, well, we want to support professional education of hospitality, but recognize the fact that, if you recruit graduates from other disciplines into your management programs, you need to have some sort of conversion program that indoctrinates them in the culture and the unique aspects of our industry. And there are some things that, I mean, God, you're a hotelier. You know very well that, the whole, on the face of it, anybody can run a hotel. Ha ha. The truth of the matter is that it's millions of small transactions, all of which have to be delivered with consistency, and that's a management challenge. And you have to have management who understand deep down and dirty into the processes and the workings behind what makes a good cappuccino, what makes a good, well-presented bedroom when guests arrive, to get things to a standard and to maintain that standard. Because you don't want to be in your hotel 24/7, but you want to know that when you're not there, standards don't drop.
I've had Gareth Banner on here from the Ned and Andrew Stembridge from the Chewton Glen as a couple of examples. And when you meet guys like that, they really are the very top of the industry, I guess, and what they do, and have an incredible, knowledge. I mean, the number of moving parts in the Ned absolutely blew my mind.
I know how many people go through their lobby every week.
I can't remember what it was, but just the restaurant that serve their staff alone open 24/7 blew my mind. But yeah, an incredible place.
Yeah, it's a remarkable enterprise, that. And then you say at the other end, you look at Iconic and what Andrew's doing there, and my goodness, operating at such an exceptionally high level. That's the great thing about our industry, isn't it?
It is, yeah, but I guess the trouble is, if from the demand supply for courses, is I suppose hospitality in its sort of hugest guise, and it is a huge employer. We're the third, fourth largest employer in the country, I think, aren't we? Which has come to light quite a lot during this pandemic, but it still has this overriding reputation, I suppose, which is probably why the demand side is being hit of there being very few barriers to entry, and it is the sort of industry that so many people end up getting into because they did a job while they were at uni or something, or went into it for a short period of time, fell in love with it, and then developed a career. But very, very rarely does it seem to be the sort of the number one primary focus. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, no, it seems totally fair. And I was born into a family of hoteliers, and even so, my careers advisor at school was dead against me going to study hotel management. And you think, God, why is that? Thank God I didn't listen to him. But I think we do have to change the image of the industry. But then people have been saying that forever. It's not a new problem. And I think part of the problem is the fact that because we are made up of so many small and medium-sized enterprises, you can't see a clear career path. If you train to be an engineer, you can see, well, I can go and work for Rolls-Royce or whichever of the engineering companies. If I train in HR, if I'm an accountant, if I could get one of those disciplines, then I've got a clear career path. But the problem is that very often to advance your career, you have to move jobs because of the nature of the fact that you kind of max out in the business that you're in, and there's no headroom above you for your next step. And that I think is one of the disincentives. And probably the other thing is, I don't think we've done ourselves any favors over the years, not just in the UK, but internationally, by being seen as a place where you can always get a job. Of course, most of the jobs are at the lower end of the pyramid. It's quite a steep pyramid to get up to senior management, isn't it? And people look at that and say, well, there's an awful lot of guys waiting and clearing tables and doing entry level jobs to the number of people who are running the business. So it's quite a rarefied atmosphere to get up there.
Yeah, although I would say the flip side is, you can come and prove yourself. The one thing that we don't need, albeit I appreciate, hugely beneficial, and maybe it comes later once you've fallen in love with the sector, but, you don't need formal qualifications to move very quickly, because all we really need is good human beings with the ability to articulate, communicate, look you in the eye, smile, and fundamentally just help other humans enjoy their visit, whether that be in a hotel for days or in a restaurant just for a couple of hours. And actually, the exciting thing about our sector is you can sort of leap up the hierarchy very quickly if you've got the right attitude. But all too often, then I suppose you get to a point where you don't necessarily have the more formal skills and the managerial skills and the communication and the finance skills. But I guess at that point, that's probably why I guess your mentorship and some of the other training you do is particularly beneficial, I suppose.
That's exactly right, and I think. Yeah, that's completely right, and I think that's what we have to change. It is great that you, and one of our greatest assets is the fact that you can enter at any level and achieve any level. I mean, whilst I've been running this, when I took over running the institute, our president at that time was Sir David Michels, who'd been global chief executive of Hilton, one of the largest hoteliers in the world, and he rejoices in the fact that he hated school, didn't do well at school. And his first job in hotels was as a porter. And he built up through that and ended up running Hilton worldwide. He acquired a lot of education along the way, but he was always a champion of the fact that, it's not all about formal education at a young age. It's about developing your skills as you go along. And I don't think we're making enough about that as an industry. And I mean, if I can just quote Andrew, I don't know if he said this on his podcast, but I was talking to him about it once, Andrew Stembridge, and he said, well, in some ways we've been our own worst enemy, because it's been so easy for so many years to recruit staff from Europe who wanted to come in, that we haven't focused enough on promoting the industry as a career of choice at that entry level to our home market. And I think he's very truthful there, very right.
Yeah, no, it's true. And in fact, Guy from Riverford was saying a similar thing with regard to farming. Obviously, the current crisis, which we'll come on to shortly, means that there's also, potentially the farmers have either been a little bit lazy, or it's been just particularly cost efficient to bring over the Romanians and the Eastern Europeans to do picking, which at the minute they can't do. But actually, the opportunity to improve, the standards and the pay for pickers and for farmers, is a genuine opportunity that if we could do that, being a little bit more self-sufficient, and actually it can be a great career choice for some people who want to spend their time outside and learn about agriculture and learn about farming. So yeah, maybe this pandemic is going to have some good stuff that will come off the back of it. Can I just ask quickly, how many people does the IOH employ then directly?
Oh, we're a small organisation. There's 14 of us. So
okay,
great. We're a small organisation, but
yeah, but lots of, so that wouldn't include all your helpers. So for example, if we just touch on the mentor program, as I had a little look on your website, it looked really interesting, because you've got some very high profile mentors, I guess. Can you just talk a little bit about what that service is and what the mentor and the mentoree might look like?
Okay, well, the reason we started mentoring is it's just a win-win, and I think we started originally because we wanted to do something which meant that we could say to people entering the industry, you're welcome, and we want to share our passion for the industry with you. And that's really what mentoring is all about. But the collateral benefit of it is that mentors always say to me that they feel guilty because they seem to get more from it than they give, because mentoring is completely different from being a manager. It's more akin in some ways to being a parent, but you're not there to instruct; you're there to guide and to help people develop their own thoughts. And we developed our mentoring program really because I think it's exactly what a professional body should be doing, and it sends out exactly the right message from people who have achieved levels of success in the industry, whether they're still quite early in their career or they're further advanced. And we've got mentors who are running multi-million-pound businesses and mentors who are kind of 5 years out of study themselves and got their first general managership or first senior management job. And both mentors and mentees benefit from it. It's a great system. It totally works with the empathy of our culture of our industry, and it's been one of our big successes.
And is this something that people apply to you to say, they would like to be or to have a mentor, and then you try and pair people up with somebody appropriate? Or?
Absolutely. So we talk about mentoring when we talk to students, when we talk to young people, and obviously when people graduate, very often they turn their student membership into graduate membership. So we approach them then. We also work with a number of employers who have a graduate program, and they want to provide a mentor both within the business and also, if you like, a pastoral mentor from outside the business. So with no commercial axe to grind, really, so that they can be there to support and guide, and a mentee can go to them and say, well, I don't really want to talk to my boss about this or my line manager about this or my internal mentor about this, but I'm 23 years old and I've got my first supervisory job, and I'm finding it really difficult to manage a team that's got people in there who've been doing the same job for 40 years or for 30 years. How do I cope with that age gap as a young person? And that's the sort of thing that a mentor will talk through with a mentee. And those are real problems. I'm sure we all went through that when we were junior managers. And how do you make that step when you're trying to be the boss to somebody who knows the job far better than you do, and will still be doing it 5 years, 10 years after you've moved on?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's one of the.
It's about that, and it's about making people welcome in the industry, and kind of smoothing out the bumpy road of the first year. As people are really trying to find their feet and maybe lacking a bit in confidence, maybe not, but and of course, easy thing for us to do is to provide a framework for mentoring to happen in, because to get the ball rolling as mentors get to know mentees, we give them a couple of interesting articles from either from industry magazines or from outside the industry, and say, we'll both read this and then talk it to have a chat about it, and mentoring works so well. And in large and small organizations, you can be an organization with 10 employees, with 6 employees, and still increase retention by, and I mean, that's a whole other thing. But I think if you provide mentoring for your staff, they're going to stay longer because they're getting more from you.
Mm. And is this something that people pay for specifically, or is it part of membership?
No, it's something we do freely and gladly with our members. It's what we do, and when you're in membership, it's one of the things that you get either as a mentor or as a mentee.
Okay, so for people listening who think that sounds fantastic, is it people can join either as an individual or they can encourage their company to join? Is it, how does membership work?
Both ways. Most of traditionally we are a professional body, and so our members are individual members of the profession. But increasingly these days, companies are saying, well, we will bring our cohort of members or of managers or our aspiring leaders of tomorrow in as part of our investment in their continued professional development. So they come both in as part of a kind of job lot with a company, as a deal with a company, where it's part of their management development, and as individuals.
Okay, perfect. Well, at the end of this, I'll put some links through to the website so people who are inspired can go and have a little a read and look into it. But
Please
I wanted
do.
to chat to you.
Yeah.
Chat to you, yeah. Thank you. Obviously, so we're in May 2020 just to date this, so we are uh, pretty much in the thick of lockdown. We've just had some sort of rights released, I suppose. You can go outside and sit in the sun now, so Boris says. But the impact of this pandemic on hospitality sector, in particular in the last couple of months, has been catastrophic. First to get hit, hardest to get hit, probably last to come out of it. I want to talk a little bit about the impact on the industry, but before we do that, on the IOH directly, have you needed to furlough your teams? I presume you run events and things. What's the impact been on you guys?
Well, you actually hit bang on it. It's been the weirdest time for all of us, hasn't it? It really has. In all my career, I've never seen anything like this. None of us have. We have had to furlough some people, particularly, as you say, specifically those who work just in events, because I don't quite know when we're going to next have a live event. So we've had to do that. Perversely, and also some of our people who work on the side supporting universities, because, of course, universities effectively are closed at the moment, aren't they? In many parts of the world. Although, in fact, we're just bringing some of those back in. But I think the long-term consequence of this is going to be massive. It really is. I think so many businesses are going to be strapped for cash, and really that's a challenge. But and I think the confidence. What the most important thing we need to do is to inspire confidence that when you go and eat out or you stay in a hotel, you're not going to die. You're not going to, you're not, seriously, you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty frank, but you're right. Yeah,
Well,
that's the key thing you don't want when you go out for dinner.
that the food will be prepared safely. It will be served safely. That you will be in a clean environment, an environment which is cleaned to the right standards to protect you. That your bedroom will be sanitized. We're not talking about the old thing where they used to put a strip of paper over the loo seat to show that it had been cleaned. But there has to be. I think cleaning regimes will become the new marketing initiative, and businesses are going to be talking about just what they're doing to protect both their clients and their staff. Because I think you're not going to want to work in a hotel where you don't think they're taking adequate precautions for me, or a restaurant, or a bar, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we should be very good at that because food fundamentally can kill you if it's not prepared properly. Shellfish can do it even if it is prepared properly. So we do tend to be an industry that understands that.
Yeah.
Second to healthcare, you'd like to think that we're particularly good at recognizing our responsibilities. However, maybe not so much the hotel sector, although it's probably still relevant. But certainly the dining sector in the last few years has been really suffering with increased supply, increased overhead, increased costs. Drop in margins. If you're, we've seen high profile Jamie Oliver's, Coluccio's, Patisserie Valerie, we've seen all these companies going under anyway. If you increase the cleaning regime, decrease the covers, both of those are going to have a direct impact on revenue and on costs. How do we navigate that?
Yeah, the maths don't work, and you can't charge £60 for a burger because it's cost you so much to produce it, and you can only get half the number of covers in your restaurant. You're right; those are massive challenges. I wonder if they will be a long-term benefit for the independent restaurant sector, which is the side that has suffered most and hardest. And I'm sure you know a lot about that, Mark.
I do.
Because private equity will look at this and say, the fizz has gone out of the market, because we can't get the same number of covers into a 1,000 square foot restaurant. We can't. We've got massive on costs in terms of cleaning regimes. It's enormously difficult to redesign our kitchens or redesign our menus so that our chefs can be socially distanced or can at least work safely. So it is in the private equity sector that we're seeing them disappear at the moment, aren't we? Where they're saying, and these guys I think are quite ruthless, and they say, well, if the maths don't work, the maths don't work, and so it might well be that there's a renaissance of independent restaurants, but operating under those tough conditions where there are price points that you can't exceed, and it's going to be hard to provide that at a profit.
Absolutely. Yeah. The deluded optimist in me hopes that this is an opportunity for the independent sector. This is called the humans of hospitality rather than the brands of hospitality, and was launched almost for that reason. In the fact that I found it a little depressing that so much of hospitality was being turned into a commodity with the backing of the VCs and the kind of constant rollout of what I describe as fairly beige operations. And actually, I love our sector because it's tens of thousands of years old and it's always been about service and hospitality and looking after people, and quirky and different. And everywhere you go globally, is a completely different experience because of the nuances of local culture. And I found it a little bit depressing to see us, just turn that into a commodity. However, even I wouldn't have wished for quite such a catastrophic impact, because cash flow wise, unfortunately, I think a lot of the independents are going to struggle to come out of this the other side as well. And then, as you say, even if we do get through, how we operate, with those kind of margins. I suppose one of the key things that we've had because of the growth in our sector is the sort of constantly increasing rents. All too often, business rates are reflective of the rent we're paying. That feels like something that has to change, because if we've got less covers and we can't turn over the same amount, and we're making a tiny margin on a big amount of turnover, would you say that? And I suppose that's also reflected in the capital investment in properties in the UK compared to a lot of Europe. Our hotels are more expensive. What's your thoughts on the longer term impact, I suppose, on property values and rents?
Well, I think I'm not an expert in the commercial property market, but I think that if you are operating commercial property, you're very worried at the moment because you have seen the retail sector suffer incredibly badly. And, and we were talking, I think, before we went online, and you were saying about, the deliveries that come to the house all the time. We all buy everything online these days, don't we? And I think so. Landlords, property owners, and investors are going to be looking at it and saying, "Well, we are going to have to work with finer margins, and there will be deflation in commercial property. I'm quite sure, not only in retail and restaurant space, but also in commercial property of office buildings, because working at home is becoming much more accessible than it was before, wasn't it? Isn't it? And people aren't going to want necessarily to stand on a crowded train and go into a busy city every day when they can work perfectly comfortably at home. So habits are going to change, and this is going to be a real. I think this pandemic we'll look back on it when we're over the bruising impact, and say, well, that was a real sea change of the way that the whole economy hangs together and works. And hopefully, one of the impacts will be that property leases and rentals become more affordable, and you can operate a restaurant, because if you can't, they're going to have a lot of empty restaurant spaces, aren't they? If you can't do it at the profit, you'll stop doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're such an important part of placemaking, towns and cities and villages, they all thrive. As human beings, I think, that's almost our reason for being on planet Earth. So the thought of not having those in the local community would be a pretty depressing place to live, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it would. And I'm certainly not going to knock the private equity guys, but I do think those who are entrepreneurs, independent businesses, those who have built their businesses and are from our world, rather than investors who come in to benefit from the success of hospitality. And it's been a remarkable success, hasn't it? If you I don't know how long you've been in the industry, but I've been in it long enough now to say that the standards, both of hotel accommodation and restaurant operations at all levels, not fine dining necessarily more than others, I think family dining and everything is just at a level now that is so much higher than it was 20, 30 years ago. And I think that those of us who are operators and people who are actually from the industry, rather than investors who come in because they see gains there, are very tenacious and very resilient. And this is a massive shock that we're going through now. But we've been through big shocks before, and businesses have rebounded after wars, going back a time, after wars, after Gulf War, Gulf Two, and all the rest of it. We I certainly lived through those years, and we've recovered from deep recession. The 2008 recession, hospitality did very well through that, and I think we will survive this. Obviously, there will be casualties. There will be people who are just too highly geared or lose heart, or just don't have the patience to wait for the the improvements to come. But our industry will rebound. It will take time, but it will rebound.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it's been exciting already to see the entrepreneurial sector and its response, and whether that be starting to do home delivery or taking stuff around by bikes, and actually just the reputation of our industry. I think as we've sort of stood up and fed the key workers and fed the NHS, and I think from a I don't know, perception of the industry, maybe it's done us some favors, and people have realised how important it is to their day to day lives. It's not until you take something away that people realise how much they enjoy going to a pub and having a pint of beer and a cheeseburger or something, and maybe the whole industry will get a little bit more sort of positive appreciation, I suppose, off the back of this. And if we can explain to people, because I think one of the key things that's come out is that a number of operators have been struggling, but pretty much everybody has come out now and said, look, this is how tight our margins are, this is how quickly we ran out of cash when you closed us, and this is how long we'll survive. I think it was something like 17 days worth of cash flow in most hospitality businesses, and maybe now people realise that actually we're not all making millions of quid. There'll be a little bit more support from the consumer, and I really hope that the consumer does go out, although I'm realistic enough to know, having seen the publicity, when a few KFCs and McDonald's opened in the last 10 days and the queues outside them, it depresses me slightly, because what I'd love to see is the consumer sort of appreciating those local entrepreneurial businesses and going out and supporting them.
I totally agree, and I do think it will happen, but but it's going to be a battle, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely. So speaking of which, the government have stepped up and recognised this, I guess across all sectors with the furloughing scheme in many ways. But what's your thoughts on the government support that's come about so far, and what would you like to see improved or changed?
Well, I think the government support so far has been very good. I think they've recognised what had to happen, and I can quite understand that they want to protect jobs through the furlough scheme rather than go the American way, because something like 37 million people in America have been made redundant in the last 2 months, which again is a massive cost for the economy. And certainly if we did it in the UK or Europe, we'd have enormous costs from the government, have enormous costs from that. I think what we really need to see is that, and this is going to be the challenge for government, because they're going to have to get their money back in some way. And I think we're all anticipating that there'll be tax rises. But as an industry, we are going to have a long, slow road to recovery, and we need support in that, whether it is holidays on some of the taxes that we pay, whether it is incentives and support, whether it is a lessening of rates, business rates, or back to the old question, and it's the thing that UK hospitality bang on about a lot, about whether the VAT rate should be reduced for hospitality. These things are all difficult to envisage at a time when, as I say, the government's going to be really trying to rebuild its reserves again, or pay down some of the debt that it's acquired, keeping the country going. I wouldn't want to be in politics at the moment, would you?
No, what a duff job, eh? And to anybody being critical of the government, I would say, my goodness, knowing how hard it is to operate a business. And I think most business operators and senior managers, credit where credit's due. We say, look, it's tough, isn't it? These things are never black and white. It's nuance, it's balance. You're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. The current scenario is either one way the economy is going to be screwed, and the other way people are going to die. And the seesaw between those two things, what a challenging thing that is to try and navigate.
Yeah, and okay, we're navigating our own challenges, but everything is happening in real time, and so the poor guys running the government don't have the time to reflect, think, plan, develop strategies. Everything is on the fly. Everything is on the hoof, and this thing unfolded so fast, didn't it? It was an absolute avalanche of stuff going wrong, and I think it's very easy to criticize the government. It's very easy to criticize, and any organization where they have to react so quickly that.
It's just mind blowing. I mean, we know how difficult it is to run a service on a Saturday night, and it's typical in hospitality. People don't stagger their arrival. Everybody arrives between 7:50 and 8:30, and it all goes completely chaotic in 40 minutes. And that's just running service. How you extrapolate that across a country and something like this is just absolutely mind blowing. Speaking of government support, one of the things I guess we're looking for as an industry is some sort of clarity on when we might be able to open, and then what that might look like, and whether that's cleaning standards, whether it's things like, we've seen perspex screens in restaurants, whether it's lower occupancy rates. Does the IOH, have you got an ear to government, and are you part of the sort of creating the solutions to this, or are you very much waiting for government to lead on this?
Well, we're not a lobbying organisation. The lobbying organisation for our industry is UK Hospitality, and I think Kate Nichols and her team have done a fantastic job representing the industry to government, and the things they're doing both in public and behind the scenes are fabulous. But we do have access into the all-party group, the all-party working group on hospitality. One of the industry representatives on that is Grant Hearn, who is a fellow of the Institute, speaks for the UK Hospitality, but also speaks for us. So we kind of have indirect routes in. But as I say, our main purpose is not to be a lobbying organisation. We have active involvement with the Department of Education, obviously, because we're an educational charity. But we don't, we are better advised to support UK hospitality and the work they're doing than to do a kind of Me Too thing where we're putting in a slightly different agenda. They're the ones who set the agenda. They're the strategists. Support them getting on with it. What we do is take their messages and cascade them through to our 15,000 members.
Yeah, well, likewise, Kate Nichols has actually been on the podcast a few weeks ago when they were really in the thick of the sort of furloughing negotiations and all that kind of stuff. And I think, what they've pulled off is fantastic and to be applauded. So, as we look to reopening, so we've been told pretty much early July, the sort of earliest date, I guess, albeit many businesses are making pivots into home delivery or takeaway. There's also the sort of conversations, I suppose, around the complexities maybe of, city centre restaurants that might be underground and fully air conditioned compared to, again, iconic hotels and something like the Chewton Glen, and having a big sort of outside space and lots of acres where people can spread out, or restaurants that may have huge terraces, or country pubs compared to city centres. Have you? And I appreciate this is complex, and this is why we're lucky not to be in government. But any thoughts on whether this needs to be a sort of a blanket release of hospitality, or whether we're going to need to be a little bit more intelligent and a little bit more staggered, I suppose, in how we release it? Have you given that any thought?
Well, I've given it a lot of thought, and I can only see it being a staggered release, because I think, as you say, there are some businesses and some sectors which can kind of re-engage themselves far more easily than others, and I think, I think there's going to be challenges with places where, as you say, they're a subterranean restaurant, or they're all they're halfway up an office building and they're dependent on, or high-rise building and they're dependent totally on shared air conditioning. I think there's going to be challenges with that. I think the places with outdoor space, it's very easy to see how they can do it. And I think it'll be a phased release. I really do.
I think it's the year of alfresco, isn't it? Probably it'll start to absolutely pour it down with rain, because the weather has been fantastic pretty much since Boris told us we all had to stay in our houses. And as soon as we're released, knowing the British weather, it will rain for a couple of months. But at the moment,
snowing
I've got exactly. Yeah, I've got a seafront restaurant, one of mine. Big terrace. We got plenty of room on the sand, and we think, oh my goodness, we really could get these open in a safe way. But I appreciate, how you legislate for the nuances of our industry must be phenomenally challenging.
Yeah, exactly. But please God, this weather does continue, because I think the part of the salvation for the industry is going to be the staycation this year.
Yeah, very much so.
We're not going abroad for our holes, are we? So
no, and we're relying on that. I think if we can have 100% occupancy for July and August and September, that would be very much appreciative to it. So anybody listening, please do book somewhere in the UK and go somewhere in July, August, September. It'd be hugely appreciated. We've seen, I touched on this a few moments ago, but we've seen our industry in many ways respond positively, with regards to feeding key workers or pivoting. Have you seen any great examples that have sort of jumped out from any of your members where they've, either been supportive in a charitable way, or they've pivoted their business in a particular way? Has anything jump out that you've spotted in the last couple of months?
Oh, there have been so many heartwarming stories, haven't there? So many examples of our industry doing great things to support to support the community at large. I think it's mind blowing that Claridge's is open for key workers. But that's just one example. I mean, hundreds of hotels are just serving those people who need to self-isolate from their families so they can be near their work and do their jobs in hospitals. Everybody made such a big sacrifice, and I think our industry has stepped up to the plate. They've been supporting food banks. They've been, a lot of people have given kitchens over so that food can be prepared for home delivery for people in need. There have been so many heartwarming stories. But can I just make a more general point on that, though? That I think
Please do.
even before this, and I think we really have, as an industry, we can hold our head up high for the way that we have responded to the civic need. One of the things that has humbled, as a hotelier who came into the institute, one of the things that has humbled me most was I spent time looking at Meals on Wheels and going out and doing Meals on Wheels delivery. And it made me realize that, A, it's a thankless sector of the industry. I mean, I don't think anybody, thinks, I hope when I grow up I can run a Meals on Wheels organization. But the contribution that makes to giving people independent living where otherwise they would have to be institutionalized in some way, and the bridge that it creates between people who are isolated because of various conditions, age and infirmity, and the community, enormously important. And I came away from that feeling so proud of the industry for doing that. And I think that whole feeling I've just got it on acid now, because we really have excelled ourselves as an industry in terms of demonstrating that we are empathetic. If you're going to succeed in this industry, you've got to be a people person. You've got to have compassion. You've got to have all of those things. And we've just really stood up to the plate and done what we can to support key workers, to support families who are disadvantaged or going hungry because they don't have access. All sorts of tremendous heartwarming stories come out. And, I do think that as an industry, we can all be very proud of that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I think Danny Meyer makes this point of, hospitality being a reflex. And in the same way, if you threw something at people they would normally duck, people who are destined for a life in this industry just genuinely want to make other people feel better, and have a better day for a short period or a long period of time. And the whole industry has had that reflex response to this, which says, look, we are about people. We spend almost every minute of every day serving people, and how can we step up and what can we do to help? And it's been, it's made me proud of our sector again, which is exciting to see, because it's definitely been having some problems, I guess, in the last few years. So let's hope it continues to get that support. Is there anything else, Peter? Thank you for sparing so much time. It's been fascinating to chat to you. But is there any other burning issue that you would like to bring up while you've got our ear?
I think we've covered the key burning issues, haven't we? I think the only thing to say at the end of this is these are dark times, but we all need grit and determination. We need to power through this and to really be resilient, not be afraid to ask people for help, whether it's our landlords or whether it's our supply chain. We need to all work together to survive this and to get back on track. But as I say, I have absolute faith that as an industry we will survive. A, because we're essential; we're an essential industry, but also because of the grit and determination and the resilience that we've got.
No, I'll second that 100%. And I think you're right. To ask for help is key. I don't think it's about, the tenants versus the landlords. And there's clearly going to be a lot more focus on this in the next couple of months, or very soon, in fact, as the next quarter's sort of national rent payments are due. And it's not us against them. It's saying, look, we're in this together. We can't take 100% of the hit on this. You can't take 100% of the hit, but we do need to work together to find a way out, because that is the only way that all of our businesses are going to survive going forward. Where should people go, Peter, if they want to follow you guys? Is there a particular social media channel, or is it your website that's the best place to go to find more details?
On social media, we're IOH_online. And you'll find us on Twitter, you'll find us on Instagram, you'll find us on Facebook, you'll find us obviously in LinkedIn. Find us there, or IOH instituteofhospitality.org.
Perfect. Okay, well, I'll pop some links up as well on the show notes to this podcast. But thank you so much for sparing the time and popping your head above the parapet in this pandemic time. It's really appreciated. Really enjoyed our chat.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for asking me, Mark, and I wish you and yours every success. And
thank you.
Good luck. Okay.
Cheers. So there you have it. What a thoroughly decent human being Peter Ducker is, and the IOH sounds like they're doing a fantastic job in representing and supporting our industry in so many fields. So really hope you enjoyed it. I will pop some links up. Go to humansofhospitality.co.uk and I'll put a couple of links up to the IOH's website and to their social media. And don't forget, please leave a review either on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice. Click on 5 stars, little written review. Really helps out and would be greatly appreciated. Okay, I'll be back again in the next few days.